Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be focusing on the most underrated weapon currently within Warzone, and that is the SA87. I know there's a lot of people out there that have been fanboying or fangirling for this weapon for a while, huge supporters of the SA87, and feel like it's been slipping under the radar for quite a while. So we'll talk about how it is underrated and why it can actually fit within all of the weapons that you can use when it comes to Warzone. If you enjoy the video, learn something new, please do me a favor, hit the like button. If you're brand new, want to find your way back, double check, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. One of the first things we'll go ahead and compare it with is the AMAX. So the first thing we want to take a look at is recoil patterns. I'm going to compare this with the AMAX because it's very similar to AMAX in a lot of ways. It actually has the same TTK as the RAM, surprisingly enough, even though that thing feels like it melts. This is kind of how it works. So I'm not going to actually adjust for any recoil. We're just going to aim, pull the trigger, 45 round mag. You can kind of see how the recoil pattern goes on the AMAX. For the SA87, since this comes with a 60 round mag, what we'll go ahead and do is start with 45 bullets. We'll go ahead and line this up. I'm going to go ahead and pull the trigger and we'll kind of see how the recoil goes. So if you notice, the recoil in terms of height is very similar. Maybe it is, you know, because it's right there and right there. They're very close. And it's very easy to control. It just goes straight up and to the right. So if I just go trace the opposite where I hold down and to the left, it'll be a relatively easy recoil pattern. So there's that. AMAX, same thing. So they look very similar. Obviously, I fired more bullets. So that is one thing. Recoil pattern, actually pretty nice. So now let's go ahead and compare some of the stats. And to make this comparison as easy as possible, we're going to be comparing the AMAX with the RAM with the SA87. Right here, when it comes to fire rate, you can see that they're very similar. About 5% difference between the SA87 and the AMAX. When it comes to ADS speed, you can see that they are about, you know, what is that, 22 milliseconds, which is about a frame and a half at 60 FPS. So relatively small difference, very negligible, especially when some of the guns people were stacking were like 500 milliseconds. When we had like a Bruin meta, it was like closer to 450, 480. So this is right within the meta ADS speed, considering the RAM is right at 400. Sprint to fire time, everything looks pretty similar. Tactical sprint to fire time. Movement speed, it's the same speed as the AMAX. ADS movement speed, a hair slower. RAM kind of comes out ahead. And then we have vertical recoil reductions with these attachments. Hip fire is actually better than the AMAX and better than the RAM, which is kind of odd that an LMG would have that. Bullet velocity, its bullet velocity is almost identical to the AMAX. Reload time, a little bit slower, but you do get 60 bullets in the mag. Now that we know that they're very similar together in terms of handling, it actually feels the same. You get slightly better hip fire. Then it kind of brings into the conversation, where does the TTK land? And when we take a look at the TTK chart, what we'll do is kind of number this down so we can see the difference here. So now when we take a look at the TTK, what we can see is that very close. Obviously, they win in their order. The AMAX is number one just because its damage drop-off isn't that crazy, has high DPS. And then we have the RAM, which is primarily used for sniper support, but you can use it at long range. And then we have the SA87, which doesn't do too great up close, which it shouldn't. But you can see it actually performs better than the RAM from about 45-ish meters, 43-ish meters, all the way up to about 53 meters. And then you can see that after about 53 meters, they end up being tied. The RAM TTK and the SA87 have the same TTK once you get beyond about 53 meters, which is crazy because that is where a lot of those gunfights will happen. Probably around 55 up to about 100-ish meters is where you're going to challenge most of your gunfights at range. Most of the close ones are usually within 20 meters. So then you have your SMG for that, or maybe you run something that gets you out to about 30, 40 meters, depending on the weapon. But statistically, the TTK is there. It's not quite as good as the AMAX. Nothing's still quite as good as the AMAX, but you can see that the ADS right on par, bullet velocity, and you get a 60 round mag. Now let's see how Now let's go ahead and take a look at how much damage that is per mag. So using that spreadsheet I have linked in the description, you can see TTK compared at the bottom. We can have this chart here where it ranges the various different damage profiles, long range damage profiles, and then the damage per mag factoring in their ammo count. Obviously LMGs tend to sit at the top, but you can see for the SA87, you get a lot of damage. You're able to down players, 7.5 players at full health. Obviously, if you're landing 100% of the shots to the chest, less likely, but it is capable, if you are accurate, of squad down. And AMAX comes pretty good, close to that as well. It has about 6.5, but you can see that it actually has a little bit more damage. You can have enough bullets to down an additional player, which is nice to see. Long range DPS, it doesn't perform quite as good as the AMAX. Each of the AMAX bullets have a little bit more punch, but it also has those extra bullets. So in case you miss, you're not as penalized as hard by having to reload and having an extra 15 bullets to work with. So that's the big difference there. It's 9 shots to kill versus the AMAX 8. So relatively speaking, it will feel a little bit slower, but its fire rate's the same as the Cold War AK-47. So if you've been comfortable with that one at range, you'll probably be comfortable with this one as well. So now that that's all been said, let's go ahead and take a look at the loadout. And the loadout has to be made this specific way. And I'll go ahead and kind of explain through it. You got to go with the monolithic suppressor, which obviously that's going to give you bullet velocity and range. Its barrels kind of suck. They slow you down way too much. You can go with this one, which would actually add a ton of bullet velocity and feel a little bit closer to what we have with some of the other Modern Warfare guns. But this is supposed to be more of that hard hitting type gun. So we can get away with the bullet velocity, since without this, it is still faster than the AMAX. So if you're very comfortable with the AMAX bullet velocity, should be a smooth transition. And since we're going to get rid of that barrel attachment, we have to go ahead and replace it with something that's going to help speed up our aim down sight. And that's where the tack laser comes in, which is going to help with stabilization. And then we are using the Ranger, since this is vertical and to the right. We kind of even that out. Since it doesn't have a lot of wobble, it's pretty much just straight to the right. This can cut down on that vertical component of it. So we go with the Ranger foregrip. Even though it's a little bit slower, you might have a little bit more comfort going the Commando foregrip. To each their own. The difference between those and ADS is very small, so it's not really a huge deal. When it comes to the 60 round mag, you definitely want to go 60 round mag, because if you're going to go with the 50, you might as well go with the AMAX, because it has 45 bullets. But on top of that, the difference between these is like a quarter of a frame at 60 FPS, so it's not a huge deal in terms of ADS, especially since we're making up for it on the tack laser. You could use whatever optic you want. Obviously, the main go-to at range is the VLK. But there are other ones. If you wanted to go through, you could choose whatever you wanted. Some people go with the hollow sight, and that's kind of how that weapon builds out. And personally, I if I'm playing Rebirth, I get a ghost loadout right off the rip. I can pull off a Psycob or something like that. If you're gonna run it with the secondary, you're gonna want one that handles a little bit more range. So LC10, PPSH if you like the recoil. You also have the AK-74U. You can even go MP7 if you want to go that route. But that's pretty much the loadout. So that is the most underrated weapon currently within Warzone. If you think there's another underrated weapon that nobody's talking about, let me know down in the comment section below. Appreciate all the support on the content. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button. If you're brand new, want to find your way back, subscribe with notifications on. Thank you for watching. As always, have a great day.